What are the significant items that are causing us a little bit of issue as we step into this budget? Well, first off, the first one's it's healthy growth right now. Our community is experiencing, as I mentioned, if you look at our median household income, that $119,000 puts us above even Prince William County. And the list of counties here, this is our comparables in Planning District 16, but also beyond that to different counties that we often compare to. So we have the highest median household income in the list here that you see, and that's at the $119,000. That puts us number 19 in the country in terms of median household income, and that puts us 5th in the state of Virginia in terms of household income. On the right-hand side, I want to point out a significant factor. If you look at the average employment growth, if you go back to 2013, we had employment of around 38,000 jobs in Stafford County. Fast forward to 2022, that has grown to 50,402. A pretty significant statistic to keep people in our community. We still have a lot that commute out to work, but a lot of people can now stay in Stafford County for their employment. Looking at the impact and growth in the education system, which I might borrow the term budget dust from now on. That's a pretty good, okay, it sounds pretty good. I might be allergic to budget dust though. Looking at our projected growth, right now, as I mentioned, our population 163,417, and that goes with a school population of a little over 30,600. That is not anticipated to slow. You can see the projections going forward, and those are definitely on the incline there. If you look in terms of percentage of school students per population, again, Stafford County is at the top in our comparable districts and in planning district. We're a little over 18.6% of our ratio of students per population, and that tops Prince William County, that's 18.3, but they are next right behind Stafford. So as I mentioned, with almost 20% of our population in veterans, that's a great thing, a huge piece of the fabric of our community. With that, though, also comes some tax relief items that the board is well aware of. We've been trying to work with the state and will continue to work on the state to offset some funding. But if you're familiar with the unfunded mandate known as the Veterans Tax Relief Program, and that makes up about 92% of all of our tax relief. And you can see on the slide how it's grown. In fiscal year 2022, that equated to about 9.7 million. Fiscal year 2023, 14.5 million. And we are projecting for the next fiscal year that will equal 16.2 million, or roughly 7.3 cents, an equivalent of our tax rate. One of the big items that we are dealing with is inflation. I mean, everybody's hearing about that in the news and seeing that at the grocery store, seeing that at the gas pump, and the county is not immune to inflation. We also have to account for those pressures. We've seen a 44% increase in gas prices since 2021. We've seen a 13% cumulative inflation increase for our utility operations. We even, in some of the subsets within utilities, we've seen chemicals that we have to use in our process go as high as 32% in regards to inflation. You look at the chart on the left, two of the largest drivers, energy and food. We experience that in our community. Our employees are experiencing that as well, members of our community. Big picture from looking at all funds. So this is focusing not just general fund, but all fund. That's a pretty significant number. In the bottom left-hand screen, we are approaching $1 billion as a government entity. So that counts all the school funds, all of our funds, a little over $947 million. In looking at our all funds expenditures, 64.5% of our all funds expenditures go to schools, their debt service, and capital. On the revenue side, 30.5% comes from property tax and 27.9% from state revenue. This is focusing and drilling down into the general fund. I'll just call your attention to the largest pieces of the pie. On the expenditures portion of general fund, we've got a 47.5% to education and a 23.9% to public safety. And public safety received a 17% increase from last fiscal year. So when you look at the 23.9, that is significantly up. The largest increase in revenue, as you go over to the blue circle, That is from the federal government with ARPA. Those additional funds came in, but the majority of our general fund comes from property taxes, which equals about 67.8%. Going down our revenues, you can see the fiscal year 23 tax rate of 85 cents compared to the proposal within my budget of 94 cents for 2024. We are also proposing a 2024 fire levy of 3 cents, a 3.1% increase in assessments. All those changes equal a 13.1% property tax revenue increase. And then looking at our tax relief, which I mentioned earlier, which is some of our veterans' tax relief, it's 11.2%, but we've also included an increase in the senior exemption, which goes from $3,000 to $3,500. So that's a $500 increase. We've seen a 2.7% increase in our consumption tax. And then again, looking at our median assessed home value of $386,000, that puts the average tax bill at $3,628. The right-hand side, looking at expenditures, we've had an increase of 10.5% overall in our general fund. 1.5% of that is bringing in the additional ARPA funding. The budget contains an 8.3% overall school funding increase. And I'll drill down a little bit on some of the largest drivers of our budget. Education funding, we're proposing a $17.5 million increase for education, $13 million for public safety support, $7.1 million for general government, and $4.2 million for transportation. I'll also like to point out that education is our largest driver, with over 52% of all new revenue going to the schools. Education investment, and I'm going to say this a couple times probably because this is significant. $17.5 million increase is proposed in the budget. That is the largest proposed increase in history for Stafford County. $17.5 million. That's an 8.3% increase over last year's budget. It's not exactly what the superintendent requested. It's not exactly what the school board requested. But I would say that we didn't get here overnight and we can't get out of it overnight. And so this is a pretty robust proposal to put forward for the largest increase in history at $17.5 million. So what does that look like? We've got $12.7 million in transfer to increased funds for teacher pay and school programs. We've got $4.5 million that we're increasing for debt service. We've got an additional $274,000 that we're putting forward for the public day school, which includes adding an additional staff member. And all of that comes to an increase per pupil of $376. Looking at public safety, which is a top priority for our citizens, also a top priority for our board. I won't go over all the details. I'll mention body cameras. We've got a couple operational increases there for $325. Sheriff's Office, 6 deputies. I will point out 2 of those 6 deputies are in response to the Marcus Law and because of the additional workload that's been put on the deputies to address as a result of Marcus Law. 8 additional officers for school protection for elementary schools, a Sheriff's Investigator 1, a Sheriff Deputy 2 for the Juvenile Services Unit. Going to fire rescue, proposal of a new engine company, some additional safety officers, and a lieutenant position for volunteer basic training. If you also look at the green box, significant investment by this board in terms of ARPA. That goes into the body-worn cameras, the public safety radios, to pay for a portion of the raise that was given at mid-year for the 15%. And then there are also miscellaneous items as well within the ARPA funding for public safety. What we've done is we talked about we've got a healthy economy. I mean, Stafford, we are well situated in terms of our house prices, our median income. So we have a healthy economy and community. We also are experiencing tremendous growth. And so with that comes growth pressures on infrastructure. We're experiencing inflation as well. And so to address that, we've tried to focus on our essentials first, and then where we could kind of inch up a little bit, we put that in the proposal. But by and large, my budget is born out of necessity. There are things that we have committed to. There are things that we have to do. And then we can do a little bit of those extra things that we've tried to add in.